Hi, everybody. My name is, as Jeff said, my name is Chris Salou. I am the sales manager at Little Leaf Farms. Just quick show of hands. Has anybody heard of Little Leaf Farms?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. We have a very familiar crowd then. So we are a hydroponic greenhouse in Devens, Massachusetts. So we produce leafy greens 365 days a year, all year round, whether it's 90 degrees in August or it's snowing in December here. We're always producing lettuce. And first off, thank you all so much for the opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about Little Leaf, and we'll get started. And if anybody has any questions throughout, feel free to just raise your hand and we can answer any questions throughout the presentation. So as Jeff said, I'm the son of Paul, and you can't really tell the story of Little Leaf Farms without first starting with my dad, Paul Salou. So he's the tall, lanky kid in the white shirt. That's the three people in front of him. That's my Aunt Stephanie and my two uncles. I've done this presentation a bunch, and I still have never figured out who the other kid is. So I'll have to get back to you guys on that.
Bring it to Thanksgiving dinners.
Yeah. So my dad, he really has been in agriculture his entire life. So this is a tree farm that my grandfather started, and so he grew up in Connecticut, and my grandfather started this tree farm, which is now Prize Corner Farm, which is run by my Uncle Mark in the middle. And it's the biggest ornamental greenhouse company in the East Coast. So agriculture has really been in his blood, and I guess my blood too, for his entire life. So my dad, he went to Cornell. He studied plant science at Cornell. Then he actually went overseas and played professional basketball for 2 or 3 years in Italy, Belgium, and Argentina. Then he came back to the States, and he's kind of been a serial entrepreneur ever since. So he started like a fish farm, a energy composting company, Backyard Farm Tomatoes, which is a greenhouse company in Maine that you might have heard of, and then Little Leaf Farms recently in 2015. So he's kind of been all over the map, but always the tying theme has been agriculture. So it's really been, that's what he's been most passionate about, and that's what led him to Little Leaf. I'm going to try to tell the story of Little Leaf Farms kind of also in terms of how my life and how I've got into Little Leaf Farms, other than the fact that my dad started the company. So there's kind of been 4 major things that I've done through my life that have kind of transferred into Little Leaf Farms and how we run things at Little Leaf Farms and what our main missions are. So first off, this is a picture of me and my little brother, probably circa 2005 maybe. So one thing my dad brought back from his time in Italy was his love for garlic. So he loved garlic. And he said, you know what, I'm going to grow garlic in my backyard. I'm going to make my kids do the work. So this is what he did. So he came back. We had about 1 acre of garlic in our backyard. So we planted it in October. If you guys have any questions about garlic, that would probably be my second favorite vegetable, actually. It's not quite green, though, so that's why I didn't say it, yeah. So we would do my dad and me and my mom, we would work on the garlic field throughout the process. We would sell garlic to local farmers markets. We'd also sell garlic to some food distributors and restaurants in the Boston area. And this was kind of my first introduction into produce sales or food sales. At the time, I might not have appreciated working farmers markets from every Saturday of the summer from 6 a.m. to noon, but looking back, it was a great experience. I learned like just basic stuff about business and also how to grow garlic. Next, I also went to Cornell. I studied nutritional sciences at Cornell, and I kind of learned all about how we process food in the body, what happens when we eat food, what is potentially the healthiest food out there, and I learned a lot about really health and nutrition. And it's cool to see how some of that I learned plays into now what we're doing here at Little Leaf as well. Another thing that we talked about a lot at Cornell was sustainability. A lot of people think about climate change and sustainability, and the first thing that comes to mind is like cars and oil and fossil fuels. But the second largest contributor to climate change in the world is industrial agriculture. So industrial agriculture is a huge contributor to the CO2 emissions that we have on our planet, and it's out of necessity. I mean, we have to feed the planet, and sometimes the way we feed is not the most sustainable way. So at Little Leaf Farms, we try to think of a better way and a more sustainable way to feed the growing population. Next, after I graduated, I was actually a 6th grade science teacher in the South Bronx in New York. So one thing I learned there was that in some communities in America, there's a lot of people that don't have access to fresh produce. So we're talking about our favorite green vegetables. Sometimes, even if you wanted to buy those, it's not available anywhere near them. So I kind of opened my eyes to what a food desert was, and it really transferred to Little Leaf, because at Little Leaf we do try to give back a lot, and we try to give fresh leafy greens to communities that need it the most. So we work with a lot of awesome organizations that help really the communities in need get the fresh produce that they deserve. And so yeah, that led me to Little Leaf Farms. And it's kind of cool to see how these four major things really come together to make what we do at Little Leaf. So now into the interesting stuff about the greenhouse. So Little Leaf Farms, as I said before, we're a hydroponic greenhouse. One major theme about the greenhouse is everything is automated. So if you were to walk into the greenhouse, you would see basically no people in there. It's a completely empty greenhouse besides for the lettuce. We don't have any of the labor needed to harvest or seed or plant or weed or all the normal labor that you would have with a growing crop, because everything is done by machinery. So it's a fully automated circle from seeding to packing, basically to shipping to when it gets into the grocery stores in, for example, Stowe or in the Massachusetts area. So I think the best way to see this is actually through video. So I have a quick video for you guys to show you a peek into the greenhouse.
As a New England farm boy, I was always interested in locally grown food. I've been involved with greenhouses for most of my life.
Paul called me up and said, hey, listen, this lettuce business still hasn't been figured out yet.
I felt strongly that we could do it a different way, grow local, and then deliver a better, superior, fresher product. We basically have learned from, I think, the best practices around the world and found our own unique way of operating here at Little Leaf Farms. Over 95% of all the lettuce that we consume is grown in California and Arizona. We're 3,200 miles away from where they're growing these products on the West Coast. But for us, it's simpler because we cut it, we deliver it, and it's in the store within 24 hours. We're successfully competing against the proven West Coast operations with close to 10 acres under glass.
People didn't know what good lettuce was. And then all of a sudden, we reset the expectation.
We're all about giving the plant what the plant needs and taking away all stresses.
We're not in charge. The plants are the ones that are in charge. We're just living in their world.
Hydroponic means grown without soil.
So it's way easier for plants. They don't have to, work. They just can take it up and enjoy the sun and just grow.
Big believer in the sun. It's free.
The light we are running from solar fields, the water we collect from the rooftop and reuse, so we throw nothing away.
People ask us, what are you doing to the lettuce? It's what we don't do to the lettuce. We never get the lettuce wet. We never spray it with anything.
My family eats the lettuce. All my colleagues eat the lettuce. And so I don't want to have pesticide residue. I don't want to have herbicide residue.
We don't make it travel miles. We don't let it sit around. We don't triple wash it over the course of moving it through some chlorinated waters for it to have kill steps in it, because we don't need to.
And we're basically feeding people's families, and that's a big responsibility.
I really believe this is the right way to grow lettuce. I think that it's a lot more sustainable, it's a lot more efficient, it's a lot safer, and it also comes up with a better quality product.
New England at one time was a huge food producer. We fed ourselves. And I love the fact that we can be part of the catalyst and being a driver here. And as we succeed in New England, we look forward to going to other regions and doing the same thing.
Awesome. So, yeah, go ahead.
If in your
digestion of food, the microbiome in your digestive tract. If we were to eat nothing but food that's processed or manufactured in this way or grown in this way, and there's no microbiome in that environment, how do you replenish the microbiome in your digestive tract?
Great question. So this actually, the lettuce, we can basically control all of the nutrients and things that help add to the microbiome in your stomach into the lettuce.
Yeah, but what if you took out the antibiotics and you eradicated your microbiome, or a large variety of microbiome, and other than taking a probiotic, is this going to add to your microbiome other than the fiber, because your microbiome needs fiber to exist. So you're adding fiber, or let's call this a prebiotic, and microbiome vitamin or whatever that you take is a probiotic. What I'm saying is, if you don't take a probiotic, are you getting any type of microbiome from this lettuce?
So what you're doing is you're feeding your microbiome with this lettuce.
Yes,
So
but you're not adding new strains of microbiome.
that's correct. But I also would say that from a lettuce standpoint, you're not adding microbiome from a regular field-grown crop either.
Oh, really?
No, because really, when you think about lettuce, the lettuce needs a certain set of nutrients to grow. And they get all of those nutrients through our fertilizer system here at the greenhouse. So everything in that crop is completely natural and what lettuce was intended to be made of. And so when you eat that and ingest it, all that natural ingredients in the same exact way you get from a field crop feeds your microbiome in the same way. And honestly, I would actually go even a step further and say, because we know exactly the nutrients that we provide to the crops from like a molecular level, you are not at risk of taking in any potential risk that lettuce could have absorbed from a field. So for example, leafy greens are an excellent uptake of heavy metals like cadmium and magnesium and things like that. And you're getting all that through a field-grown crop. So a lot of organic farms and field farms, they have to do a lot of soil testing to see if the heavy metal content of their farms are up to standard, which all farms are pretty much. But there is still some heavy metals in there that can actually damage your microbiome. So from this, the microbiome is fed through natural ingredients, like fiber, exactly what you said, and nutrients that are in the lettuce, like calcium, phosphate, nitrogen, all stuff like that. And all that is being given to the lettuce. So that's actually feeding your microbiome in a way that you have no risk of getting anything that shouldn't be in that lettuce that could have been uptaken by a field.
And no one would ever argue that we should have a diet of 100% lettuce.
That is very true. Yeah, unless you're a rabbit.
But what does, I noticed you said naturally grown. You don't claim to be organic.
Correct, we are not organic.
Right.
And the reason, so it depends on how you think about the term organic. In my opinion, we are actually almost beyond organic because we don't spray any chemicals, herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, nothing on the crop. There's no chemical residue. You're not triple washing it, which if you go to the grocery store and you find an organic package of lettuce and it says triple washed, that means that lettuce has been put into massive chlorine baths and massive sodium chloride baths to basically clean off all the stuff from the field. Because if you're a major lettuce producer from California, you have to do that. Otherwise, you're at risk of spreading things like E. coli, listeria, other pathogens like that. So we don't need to do that because we don't spray anything on the lettuce. There's no chemical residue. Nothing touches the lettuce until the consumer does. So this is the cleanest product you can get, and we also think that impacts the quality of our leaves as well.
But the fertilizer that you use in the water, that doesn't have an organic certification.
Exactly. So for example, lettuce needs like nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium, all the things that they would normally uproot from the soil. What we do is we dissolve that into we call it a fertigation solution. So it mixes water with dissolve nutrients. It's almost like a chemistry experiment where you have a certain gallon of water, then you have to get it to a certain concentration of nutrients. And so then we put that into the lettuce. There is one nutrient called, well, nitrogen, it's actually nitrogen, where we get nitrogen from a synthetically made company. So they basically synthetically make the nitrogen, and that is technically not an organic fertilizer. And that is why we're not able to be USDA certified organic. My opinion is the USDA is still learning a lot about hydroponics. And I think my guess would be in like 5 to 10 years, I bet a lot of hydroponic systems would be able to be called organic, because really our lettuce, in my opinion, is like almost beyond organic, where we know exactly what's going in it, and nothing that lettuce wouldn't normally eat is going into that fertigation solution. Yeah, go ahead.
In the presentation, they were saying that the heat was coming from solar, the heat was talking about, so I'm curious, being that this is New England, what do you do in the winter to keep a sustained temperature in there?
Great question, because New England is pretty difficult in the winter sometimes. So we get only a portion of our electricity from solar. I'd say it's about 30 to 40%. So we are connected to the local grid in Devens, and that's where we get our electricity to heat the greenhouse. We also do burn natural gas in a boiler, and then that also heats the greenhouse in the winter. From a sustainability standpoint, when we burn the natural gas, what's great is we can actually capture the CO2 before it gets released into the atmosphere. So we sequester the CO2, pump it into the greenhouse, because the lettuce needs, for example, CO2, water, sunlight to do photosynthesis. So we actually fertilize the lettuce with CO2 in the winter. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Your video showed your workers wearing hairnets.
Yep.
During the process. I'm assuming that that's because you don't wash the product, the lettuce, at all.
Correct.
Or you package it.
Correct.
How do you package it?
We package it all through machinery. So the only thing that...
Plastic, or you in cardboard boxes? How do you ship it?
So what happens is the lettuce will go on like a conveyor belt, for example, and then we have a filler machine. So it drops the lettuce, and then the lettuce is dropped into a clamshell, a plastic clamshell. And then all we need the people to do is they put the lid on top. And then it goes through a sealer, it seals the clamshell, then it gets put in a cardboard case. And then that cardboard case gets put into like a cooler, and then we ship it out to, like, for example, Market Basket or Shaw's or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
This doesn't more have to do with the sale of it, but I'm curious, how do you get shelf space, since you're still a growing company? How do you get shelf space in places that don't have it? Or places that only have a limited shelf access?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question, because that's kind of why I have a job. Yeah. So you saw Tim Kniff in the video. He's our EVP of sales. So has some great relationships with people in the produce industry. For example, like Market Basket, Shaw's, Roach Brothers, all of the major New England grocery store chains. So we basically go in, pitch, hey, you want to give this lettuce a try? And then they say, okay, yeah, we'll cut it into the space on the wall. Sometimes they'll take away another lettuce and put ours in, or they'll just expand it, so then increase the amount of spacings. But it is like a sell-in. You got to sell the lettuce into the grocery store. But we have been super lucky and been able to be successful. We have the crispy green leaf is the #1 selling lettuce SKU in New England. We're the #1 lettuce brand in New England. And we are the #7 biggest lettuce brand in the country. And this is only with 10 acres in Devens, and we just put on 10 acres in Pennsylvania as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
One is, was this technology to actually do the hydroponic setup already in place, or did you have to invent, or did you get someone to create it? Or?
Yeah, no. So my dad, he was kind of he had the brainchild of bringing all this technology together. So there's portions of the greenhouse that are invented by Little Leaf Farms, but primarily the growing system is developed by a Finnish company called Green Automation. Because in Finland, it's almost worse. It's way worse than New England, because sometimes you got like 2 hours of sunlight a day up there. So what happens is they develop these indoor growing systems to try to figure out how to grow leafy greens all year round. And so my dad saw the technology and said, wow, this would work great in Massachusetts, because we don't have the nearly extreme types of weather that they have. So it actually would work better here And we get 95% of all of our lettuce from California still. So every piece of lettuce you ate, if it's not Little Leaf Farms or not from your local farmer's market, was probably grown in Salinas Valley, California. So we thought there must be a better way for New Englanders to get local lettuce.
So the second question is, you mentioned that you've been working with other organizations for food deserts.
Yeah.
And other people do that. Could you talk more about that? And
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with the Greater Boston Food Bank, the Connecticut Food Bank, Loaves and Fishes, Love and Spoonfuls, Food Link in Arlington, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Co-op, where we donate probably close to at least 1 million pounds of lettuce a year, minimum, to basically communities in need. We worked with the Greater Boston Food Bank. They do a mobile markets program where they create mobile farmers markets in areas that you would never expect to see a mobile farmers market. And the interesting thing about donation with our product is that so many times with produce, it's in cans, and which is, again, absolutely better than nothing. But so many times you get a box from a food bank that has just canned potatoes, canned stuff, canned chickpeas. It's very rare that you're able to get fresh, perishable product like this. So that's why we love partnering with these communities to get like a fresh pack of lettuce in there, which is normally filled with all non-perishables. Yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about how clean this lettuce is. If I buy a box of this, do I need to wash it?
Nope.
Or eat it?
You can eat it right out of the container like a potato chip. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you keep insects out of your greenhouse?
Great question, man. You guys are hitting all the major points here. Great point, because we don't spray anything on the lettuce at all. And the greenhouse is not a perfectly closed system. There are doors. If I walk in there, I can bring a bug in potentially. So what we do actually is the growers will walk around the greenhouse and they will see what's flying around. There's gridded bug paper that they can look at and see, okay, this is here. And they create like a heat map, basically, of what's flying around where. So if they see, for example, in the back left corner, aphids are starting to fly around. What they'll do is they'll buy the natural predators of aphids in these big bulk bags, and they'll release the predators into the greenhouse, and they'll start eating the aphids. Yeah. And what's really great is you're probably thinking like, wait, how do the bugs not end up in the package? Because that's a great question. So what happens is the greenhouse is 72 degrees all year round. It's directly connected to the packing house, which is 37 degrees. So if a bug makes its way in there, that bug is like, no way, I'm out of here. So they go right back into the greenhouse. And if they do make it into the greenhouse, we have basically it's like a fan, a high-powered fan, which blows out all of the insects that could potentially be in there. But that being said, no insect will go in there, because as soon as they feel that temperature change, they're like, oh no, I'm going back here. So it's like a natural, basically, temperature barrier. Yeah, go ahead.
Up in Madison, Maine, where they grow tomatoes, they require hives, pollinators within the growing area. Do you require pollinators?
Yeah, so actually funny you mentioned Madison, Maine. That's Backyard Farms. That's the greenhouse company that my dad started before Little Leaf Farms.
Right. It's bought by somebody else now.
Yeah, it's bought by this massive produce company called Mastronardi, And that's actually a great example of how bugs can take over a greenhouse, though, because I believe a couple years ago they had a white fly infestation and they lost the entire greenhouse. They had to clean out the entire thing and start over. It was a 6-month process. So we take the bug control very seriously. But to answer your question about pollinators, they actually, at Little Leaf, what we do is we create a barrier to the pests starting outside of the greenhouse. So outside of the greenhouse, we plant pollinators and all these different beneficial flowers and plants that attract bees and bugs that eat the bugs that go into the lettuce. So not only do we control the pests that get in, we create a natural barrier around with pollinators to stop bugs from even getting close to the greenhouse. And so pollinators are a huge part of what we do too. And we commit I believe for every growing space, we want to be able to plant another acre of pollinators somewhere along the greenhouse to kind of help out with the bee situation. And we built a greenhouse on this plot of land. So let's do the best we can to make the land around it better. Yeah, go ahead.
You do multiple varieties of lettuce?
We do. So we do a green leaf. That's our primary. It's a baby crispy green leaf, and then we do a red and green blend, and then a spring mix. And our spring mix does have the rocket arugula that somebody mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's a combination of the red lettuce, the green lettuce, and arugula mizuna mix. We do not do kale.
And you're running that full production all year long?
Yep. So we run about 18 hours a day. I'd say like 363 days a year. We take off for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question in terms of the percentage that you get. I mean, you said everything was automated.
Yep.
You're not going to get 100%. So if it's running through the line, is there some mechanism for pulling off ones that aren't felicitous, that aren't good enough to put into a clamshell? What's your process on that?
So we don't have a process because 100% of it is good enough to go in.
100%.
Yeah. That being said, we don't put 100% in because we do get some that fall on the floor through the package. So I would say we package on average. We calculate all of the lettuce that falls on the floor throughout the process, which obviously we don't put into a clamshell. We throw that out. We are about 99% efficient with the lettuce coming out of the greenhouse that goes into a pack.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really funny because when you look at this, if you look at like the economics and the actual practice of the business, it's less a farm, honestly closer more to a manufacturing plant. But that being said, we still consider ourselves farmers and growers because it is a natural product, and it's not like we're have an assembly line for a car. It is a naturally growing product that we still gotta grow and farm. Yeah.
What about the clamshells? Have you begun to investigate how to replace the plastic
Yes.
in the clamshells?
Yep. So since we started, we were at a tub and lid, and then we went that tub and connected tub and lid, and we went from a separated tub and lid, which dropped our plastic by about 10%. Then we recently went to a peel and reseal. That actually, it stinks, but we have to go back to the tub and lid because we found that the lettuce is not holding up and the quality of the lettuce is not as good in the peel and reseal. So we made the decision to go back because it's the better thing for the lettuce. But that would have saved 30% plastic. So we're basically putting that on the back burner to then research into that to try to get to the peel and reseal, but do it correctly. And then, to answer your final question, we have looked into like biodegradable packs or potentially a cardboard pack. And no supplier around here has been able to get a consistent volume of that type of pack that would work. Because we go through I think it's like we pack 20,000 clamshells a day. So for someone to keep up with that with a biodegradable pack, it's really hard. So the next thing, what we do is we do a 100% PET recycled plastic. I know it's not a solution, but it is better than nothing so far.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about is if you had like a cardboard box waxed on the inside.
Yep, we've actually looked into that exact one.
And like a clear cellophane top so you can see the product.
Yep.
It didn't seem to be that hard.
Yeah, so it's tough. The manufacturers are not giving us a ton of solutions to this on this scale, but we are looking into it pretty heavily because we do want to get rid of the plastic clamshells because we're talking a big game about sustainability, but then we put it in a plastic clamshell. It's tough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you have a huge compost for all your lettuce that falls on the floor?
We actually sell it. We don't sell it. We give it away to local farms to feed their chickens and cows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so somebody from a local farm, it's Smith County Cheese, they come, and we actually just started this, so very topical question. We put it in these big bins, and then he takes it away, and he gets free feed. So it's kind of a win-win.
Oh, great.
Yeah. 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 All right, well, I do have some, oh, go ahead.
Well, it's off topic a little bit. You said your father started this in 2015?
Yep.
Well, over the last 3 or 4 years, other agricultural entrepreneurs have found another cash crop that they can grow in a hydroponic arrangement that everybody is flocking to. Is your father, the entrepreneur, is he considering branching out into other product other than lettuce, or is?
So right now, one of the strategies that we use, and this goes back to an earlier question about leafy greens, is that we only chose to grow really one variety, which is the green leaf, and we have to grow the red and the arugula as a mix-in. But the strategy that we went with was we want to grow one thing really, really well. We want to maximize how much yield we get. We want to maximize the quality. We want to do that. And we don't want to spread ourselves too thin as to the climate in the greenhouse, because the climate in the greenhouse is tailored to that crop, that green leaf crop. So if we introduce, for example, we're not going to do it, kale. If we introduce kale,
We're talking about kale.
So if we did introduce another type of crop, we would need to tailor the climate to that crop. So we would not be able to tailor the climate and the fertigation and the lighting to really solve for those two crops at the same time.
Well, I was thinking a whole different operation.
Oh, so
Location and everything. I didn't, you said he was an entrepreneur, branching out. He's done backyard everything, garlic and everything. I just wanted to know if you were growing and other stuff.
So the short answer is no.
Okay.
We got a lot going on with the lettuce, so that's really our biggest challenge right now. We are expanding the lettuce though. We're doing 10 acres in Pennsylvania, and then we're going to eventually build 60 acres in Pennsylvania, which is going to be 6 times the size of Devens, and it's just going to be leafy greens. Because what's interesting is even though I have those big numbers about number 1 in the Northeast, number 7 brand in the country, we're still 1% of the overall total sellable market for leafy greens. So there's still 99% left for us to go. So there's a lot of room for us to grow with leafy greens itself. And obviously some of that market is not really attainable for us. For example, we're not going to probably shred up our stuff and sell it to McDonald's, for example. And that's a large portion of it. But there still is a really large room for us to grow. So we're just going to focus on the lettuce. Yeah.
So one other thing from sustainability, and your question made me think of it. You go by one of those greenhouses, the lights are on all the time. Do you have to light 24 hours a day or no?
So no. So that's one of the greatest parts about the greenhouse is that unlike a vertical farm, for example, or an indoor farm, or sometimes these farms are in shipping containers or warehouses, they don't utilize the sun. And really the sun is what the lettuce wants the most. It's the best grow light in the world. And so we take advantage of it. And so we light our crop for 18 hours a day. Obviously in Massachusetts there is not 18 hours of sunlight. So we do supplemental lighting with grow lights. For example, if it's cloudy or if it gets dark at 4 p.m., then we turn on the lights. But in comparison to other vertical farms, which are lighting almost 24 hours a day, we use significantly less electricity on lighting because we're in a greenhouse model.
And if you do that, because we're in a low light situation, does the lettuce grow less well in November and December?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. We do about 10% less volume in the winter compared to the summer.
Even with the artificial light?
Yep, because our growers did a study where 1 hour of sunlight is equivalent to the same growth of 3 hours under supplemental artificial light. Yeah, because if you're a scientist with a grow light, you're really just trying to copy what the sun already does. So let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's just utilize it. It's free. It doesn't cost electricity. It's more sustainable, and it's better for the crop.
But the sun does something that even the artificial lights can't do, apparently. Right?
Yeah.
What you just said.
Exactly, yeah. Did you have another question, sir?
What I was curious about is, any thoughts about microgreens? And what's the difference between microgreens and what you're doing now, other than the size?
Yeah. You must have been talking to my dad because he's very intrigued at microgreens. Microgreens is, so the one thing about microgreens, for a greenhouse grower, yield is everything. It's like how much weight or how much yield can I get out of a square meter of a greenhouse? And so with microgreens, there's just so much less yield in that. But that being said, I think we could potentially, that is something we could branch out into, is we would have a greenhouse separately just for microgreens, and it would just be more of a niche product, like for a smaller consumer or something like that. We are looking into microgreens though. Yeah.
And now, if somebody wanted to do microgreens in their house,
Yeah.
what resource would you point me to?
Are you trying to do like a hydroponic microgreen?
Well, actually, yeah, I'd probably, if that's the easiest way to go about doing it, yeah. I would probably go that way if that was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, so the short answer is I'm not the expert on that. We do have actually a grower at our greenhouse that wrote a handbook on how to hydroponically grow basically everything. So if you want, I can connect you with him, and then he can give a more educated response, because I don't want to give you a response where I'm just not sure. Yeah, but yeah, if I get your email, I'll definitely connect with him, because believe me, he would love to talk to you. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the average time cycle from seed to harvest?
Great question. So from seed to harvest is about 21 to 23 days. In the summer, it's 21 days because of the light. In the winter, it's about 23 days because we have to slow down the growing cycle because we get less light. Yeah, we harvest about these gutters here that we seed and harvest. We harvest about 3,000 a day. Yeah.
The root section of the lettuce.
Yep.
What happens to that?
So it actually, what we do is we grow in peat moss. So in hydroponics, we want the substrate is to be basically totally inert. We want it to not have anything in it. We want it to just be a way for the water and the nutrients can absorb. So it's great peat moss. And so what happens is once the lettuce gets cut and all the root systems are in there, it's pretty great peat moss with organic substrate in it, so which would be great compost for somebody picking up at their local garden center. So what we do, somebody comes, we allow them to pick it up for free. They probably bag it and sell it to their local nursery. Yeah, and then sometimes employees take it home for their gardens and stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
How many employees do you have for this organization?
We have now across the two facilities, we probably have about close to 200 total. Per facility, it's like to run a shift from a labor standpoint, it's like 15 people. And then like when you add up all of the corporate people, the people that don't do the real work like me, so like then that gets you to like 180 people. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you associated with the new facility in Westbrook, Maine?
We are not, but I have heard big things about it. Yeah.
It's an interesting, where the building is part business, part residential,
part
vertical hydroponic. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds too complicated for me, honestly. Yeah.
It's right in the center of town.
Yeah, no, it's actually we work with, the Dutch are the best at all this stuff. I mean, they are the number 2 exporter of agricultural goods in the entire world behind the United States. And they are about the same size as New England, to put it into perspective. And the reason they're able to produce so much agriculture is because they have greenhouse technology. Half of their country is covered in greenhouses. They have, they call it the Westlands, they call it the Glass City. And they are able to pump out so much agriculture exports out of that simply because they're so much more efficient because they use technology like greenhouses. To get the amount of volume that we produce out of that greenhouse, you would need, I think, about 10 times the amount of field acreage to get the same amount we produce in a year. Yeah. And the greatest thing is that when you have a field farm, you plant it, and then you plant once, and then you harvest once. We basically harvest an entirely new crop every single day. Yeah.
Do you get field trips to the Netherlands to see what they're doing?
You know, I've been vying for one, and I haven't been successful. Our growers, it's mainly our growers go a lot, and the people who work in the greenhouse operations, they can learn a lot from there. There's not much that a sales guy can take in from there. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know how much time we have, Jeff, but.
Yeah, I probably want to wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys really, I didn't even need to go through the slides. You guys answered all the questions, asked all the questions anyway. But yeah, so this is just kind of the fan feedback we've got from some of our consumers. We've kind of created a little bit of a cult following of lettuce people, which is interesting. On the box, I used to have my cell phone number attached to the customer service line. So I'd have consumers call me every day being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm calling you about lettuce. And And like, I don't call any company. Now I'm calling a lettuce company. I can't believe it. So it's like, that was really fun. Thankfully, I don't have that duty anymore. But and then really, this is kind of the sustainability stuff we touched on. 95% of the greens eaten here are grown in California, Arizona, which is 3,000 miles away, which is almost, I think...
It's running out of water.
Exactly, running out of water. And every truck that goes across the country is like, I think, hundreds of thousands of metric tons of CO2 going into the atmosphere. And so we only deliver, we deliver to Market Basket, it's a 45-minute drive. And then it's in the grocery stores in 2 days from harvest. So not only is it fresher, it's local, we cut down on food miles, but the quality is better as well. This is another quick stat. We waste almost half of our food here in this country. We throw it out, and I don't blame people because it's traveling 10 days in a truck. By the time it gets to your fridge, it's already 12 days old. So then you have 2 days to eat it. Because I don't blame anyone for not wanting to eat slimy lettuce. So if we can cut down on food miles, cut down time from harvest to consumer, we can cut down on food waste, and less lettuce ends up in landfills, and more lettuce ends up on people's plates. And that's a big goal of ours too. Water. Lettuce is 95% water. So really what we're doing is we're trucking water from a place that's literally on fire to a place that we don't need. We get plenty of rain here. So from a water standpoint, we're almost like 95% efficient with our water usage. The only thing we lose is the water that gets uptaken by the crop and leaks. And so we don't really, and on top of that, we collect all of our water from rainwater off the roof of the greenhouse. Yep, all rainwater. So unless there's a drought, like a 3 or 4 week drought, we don't have a well dug on site. We can pull from the town water if we are in a drought, but we only need 20 inches of rain to run the greenhouse a year, and we get 52 inches a year in Massachusetts. So we have plenty. This kind of stat puts into quick perspective. This is gallons of water per pound of tomato grown. So for example, in the US, we need 15 gallons of water to grow 1 pound of tomatoes. In the Netherlands, they only need 1.1 gallon of water to grow a pound of tomatoes. I wish there was a lettuce graph, but there's not enough lettuce data out there to do a graph. So it just shows how much more water efficient greenhouse production is compared to field. And with the water shortage, we got to figure out ways to better conserve water. We actually talked about pests already. Ladybugs is something that goes into the greenhouse because they're kind of grazers on carnivorous grazers. They don't eat the lettuce, they just eat the things that are eating the lettuce. This is kind of the nutrition. Nutrition is definitely a little bit of a muddled science. There's a lot of different things going around. You can read a different opinion on nutrition depending on the day of the week. But I think one overarching theme that I did learn is that the more vegetables you eat in general, the healthier you're going to be. And I think people are told that since they were kids. So it's not like, it's great to work at a company where it's not like I'm selling candy or cigarettes. We're selling healthy vegetables to help people eat more lettuce. We touched up on charity and really giving back to the community. So these are all of the different organizations we work with. Again, we make it a goal. We minimum will donate at least 1 million pounds a year of lettuce. We work with all of these awesome. We also have a great program where we work with public schools in the area. Massachusetts has great programs that help schools buy locally grown produce. So we work with Lowell, Chicopee, Springfield, Providence, New Bedford, all these awesome school districts. And we get great feedback that it's the only lettuce that the kids will eat. So that feels really good when they send us back to that. And this is kind of just a more like philosophical point almost, where humans really have been, since the history of time, really figured out and innovated ways to feed the planet. Where everyone at one point, there's a scientist that is convinced that eventually the population will outgrow the amount of resources that we have on this planet. It's happened like since the 1800s, someone's predicted that. But every time somebody, that's Norman Borlaug. He created a disease-resistant wheat plant that basically pulled millions of people out of starvation in Mexico and China. When they thought that this is going to be a disaster, he kind of figured out a way, innovated, and really created a solution. This is Esther Boserup, and she coined the term necessity is the mother of invention. And that's basically saying that if humans have a problem, out of necessity, we're probably going to hopefully figure it out. And so that's why we kind of hope that Little Leaf is part of that solution, where we have an unsustainable industrial agriculture process and systems. We have an ever-growing population of people. We're never going to not want to eat lettuce. So we got to figure out a way to better do this, and that's where Little Leaf Farms comes in. So that was really the presentation. Again, you guys hit all the major points of the question. So you guys did my job for me. So thank you. Yeah.